I never thought I'd stand in this doorway again. 23 years have passed since I last walked through the front door of 1247 Maple Street, yet everything looks exactly as we left it. The same faded blue shutters hang crooked on their hinges, the same crack runs through the concrete steps, and that old oak tree still towers over the roof like a protective guardian, or perhaps a silent witness to secrets we thought we'd buried forever. My siblings and I inherited this house 6 months ago when our grandmother finally passed at 94. Margaret, David, and I had avoided this place like the plague for over 2 decades, but death has a way of forcing confrontations we've spent lifetimes avoiding. Now here we stand, 3 middle-aged adults reduced to nervous children at the site of our childhood prison. It's smaller than I remembered, Margaret whispers, clutching her purse like a shield. At 45, she's become everything our mother wanted to be. Successful lawyer, perfect marriage, immaculate reputation. But I can see the 10-year-old girl in her eyes, the one who used to hide behind the couch when the screaming started. David says nothing. He hasn't spoken much since we arrived in town yesterday. At 43, my younger brother carries the weight of being the family's forgotten middle child. He was always the sensitive one, the artist, the dreamer who saw too much and felt everything too deeply. Mom never understood him. None of us did, really. I'm the oldest at 47, and somehow I've become the unofficial leader of this reluctant reunion. It's my job to get us through the next few days, sort through decades of accumulated belongings, and somehow decide what to do with this monument to our collective trauma. The key turns easier than expected. Grandmother must have had the locks maintained, though I can't imagine who would want to break into this place. The door swings open with a sound that immediately transports me back 35 years, that distinctive creak that used to announce Dad's late-night arrivals or Mom's frantic departures. The smell hits me first. Not mustiness or decay as I'd expected, but something else entirely. Something familiar. Vanilla and cigarettes, and that particular scent of old books and fear that seemed to permeate every room during those terrible years. It's impossible, I tell myself. Smells don't linger for decades. Yet there it is, as real as the goosebumps rising on my arms. Do you smell that? David asks, breaking his silence. His voice is barely above a whisper, and I notice his hands are trembling. Margaret nods slowly, her lawyer's composure finally cracking. We step inside together, and I feel the house settling around us like a living thing adjusting to new occupants. The hardwood floors groan under our feet with the same complaints they voiced when we were children trying to sneak downstairs for midnight snacks. Every sound is a memory, every shadow a ghost. The living room looks frozen in time. Grandmother's furniture sits exactly where it was during our last visit, but underneath the dust covers, I can make out the shapes of older pieces. The couch where Mom used to cry. The chair where Dad would sit in stony silence after his drinking binges. The coffee table that still bears the ring stains from countless bottles and glasses, circular reminders of liquid courage and liquid destruction. She kept everything, Margaret observes, pulling a sheet off the old television set. It's the same massive console TV we watched Saturday morning cartoons on, back when we still believed in happy endings and heroes who always saved the day. But it's the walls that stop us cold. Every surface is covered with photographs, hundreds of them spanning decades of family history. Pictures I've never seen before, moments I'd forgotten or tried to forget, faces that smile out at us with secrets hidden behind their eyes. And in the center of it all, a large portrait of our parents on their wedding day, looking impossibly young and hopeful. How did she get all these pictures? David wonders aloud. We'd taken so few photographs during those dark years. Smiling for cameras felt like lying, and we'd had enough lies in our lives. As we move deeper into the house, I can't shake the feeling that we're being watched. Not by living eyes, but by the memories themselves. This house has been holding its breath for 23 years, waiting for us to return and finally exhale the truth we all ran from. In the kitchen, I find a handwritten note on the counter, clearly left for us by grandmother before she died. Her shaky handwriting reads, "The walls remember what we tried to forget. It's time for the truth. Look for the box behind Mom's picture." The box behind Mom's wedding portrait changes everything. Hidden in a space I never knew existed, It contains hundreds more photographs, documents, and letters that rewrite the story of our childhood. As I spread the contents across grandmother's dining room table, my siblings and I stare in stunned silence at evidence that our memories might be nothing more than carefully constructed lies. "This can't be right," Margaret says, holding up a photograph of our father at a birthday party. "He's smiling, genuinely smiling, in a way I've never seen before. In my memory, Dad was either angry or absent, but here he is laughing with us, his arms wrapped around all three of his children like he actually loved us." The date on the back reads, Tommy's 8th birthday, but I have no memory of this party, this happiness, this version of our father. David picks up another photo, this one showing Mom in the garden, teaching him how to plant flowers. She looks peaceful, content even. But according to my memories, Mom was always frantic, always crying, always preparing to leave Dad and never quite finding the courage to go. Yet here she is, grounded and present in a way that contradicts everything I thought I knew about our family. "Look at this," I say, unfolding a letter addressed to grandmother in Mom's handwriting. The date is from the summer when I was 12, right around the time I remember things getting really bad between our parents. But the letter tells a completely different story. Mom writes about Dad getting promoted at work, about family trips to the lake, about how happy the children seem. She mentions my good grades, Margaret's piano recital, and David's first art show at school. I read the letter aloud, and we fall silent. Either Mom was lying to grandmother, or our memories are wrong. But why would a mother lie about being happy? And why would three children share the same false memories of trauma and fear? "There are more letters," Margaret says, her voice hollow. She's found a whole stack, spanning several years. Letter after letter describing family dinners, birthday celebrations, school events, and quiet evenings at home. They paint the picture of a normal, loving family. The kind of family I always wished we'd been but knew we never were. But then David makes a discovery that changes everything again. At the bottom of the box, beneath all the photographs and letters, he finds a medical file. It's thick, official, and it has my name on it. Inside are psychiatric evaluations, therapy session notes, and medication records spanning 2 years when I was between the ages of 10 and 12. The diagnosis is clear: severe childhood trauma, dissociative episodes, and something called confabulation disorder, a condition where the brain creates false memories to replace traumatic ones it can't process. According to the file, I'd been hospitalized twice for what the doctors called complete breaks from reality. The recommended treatment included ongoing therapy and medication to help distinguish between real memories and fabricated ones. "I don't remember any of this," I whisper, staring at pages of my own handwriting describing nightmares and fears that seem both familiar and foreign. In one session note, the therapist writes that I insisted on protecting my younger siblings from the monster in Daddy, even though psychological evaluation of our father showed no signs of abuse or violence. Margaret finds her own file next, then David's. We all have them, thick folders documenting years of treatment for trauma that, according to these medical professionals, existed only in our minds. The real tragedy, according to the notes, wasn't abuse or neglect, but 3 children so terrified of normal family stress that they created an elaborate shared fantasy of dysfunction to cope with their fears. "Folie à trois," David reads from one of the psychiatric evaluations. A shared psychotic disorder affecting all 3 children, characterized by the creation of identical false memories and mutual reinforcement of delusional beliefs about family trauma. The photographs suddenly make sense. The happy moments we can't remember were real. The trauma we've carried for decades was imagined. But how do you reconcile a lifetime of healing from wounds that never existed? How do you mourn a childhood that was actually happy but felt like hell? As we sit in the growing darkness of grandmother's kitchen, surrounded by evidence of our collective madness, I realize the house hasn't been hiding our family's secrets. It's been preserving our family's truth. The walls don't remember the trauma we thought they witnessed. They remember birthday parties and family dinners, laughter and love, and 3 children whose minds couldn't accept that they were actually safe. But there's something else in the box, something that makes me question everything again. At the very bottom, wrapped in tissue paper, is a single photograph that doesn't fit with all the others. It shows the 3 of us as children, huddled together in what appears to be a closet, our faces streaked with tears, our eyes wide with genuine terror. On the back, someone has written in our grandmother's handwriting, "The night everything changed, forgive me for what I had to do." The photograph of us hiding in the closet unlocks something in my mind that feels like a door I've kept locked for 35 years. As I stare at our terrified faces, fragments of memory begin surfacing, not the fabricated trauma from our medical files, but something else entirely. Something real and buried so deep that even professional psychiatrists couldn't find it. "I remember this night," David says suddenly, his voice barely audible. His hands shake as he holds the photograph closer to the lamp. "We weren't hiding from Dad or Mom. We were hiding from someone else." Margaret goes very still. I can see her lawyer's mind working, processing, trying to fit this new piece into the puzzle we've been building. "The man who came to dinner," she whispers. "Oh my God, I'd forgotten completely. Mom's brother. Uncle Richard." The name hits me like a physical blow. Uncle Richard. How could we have forgotten him? How could three people simultaneously erase someone so important from their memories? But as soon as Margaret says his name, images start flooding back. His too warm smile, his insistence on special games with us children, the way Mom and Dad would get quiet and tense whenever he visited. "He stayed for 2 weeks that summer," I remember aloud. "Dad was working double shifts, and Mom was scared. She was actually scared of him, not Dad. That's why she was always crying, why she seemed so frantic. She was trying to protect us." David nods, his eyes closed as if he's watching a movie behind his eyelids. "She sent us to stay with grandmother, but he followed us here. That's when we hid in the closet. Grandmother found us there the next morning." I turned the photograph over and read grandmother's note again. "Forgive me for what I had to do." What did she have to do? What happened that night that was so terrible we buried not just the memory of it, but the entire existence of Uncle Richard? Margaret is rifling through the box again, looking for more clues, when she finds something that stops her cold. It's a newspaper clipping, yellow with age, dated just 3 weeks after that photograph was taken. The headline reads, "Local man dies in hunting accident." The accompanying photo shows Uncle Richard, smiling the same predatory smile I now remember with crystal clarity. According to the article, Richard Morrison, age 34, died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound while cleaning his rifle at his mother's house on Maple Street. He was survived by his sister and brother-in-law, and their 3 young children who were staying with their grandmother at the time of the accident. "Accident," David repeats, but we all understand the implication in grandmother's note. She did what she had to do to protect us. But knowing that truth creates a new horror. We've spent our entire adult lives believing our parents were the monsters when they were actually trying to save us from a real one. The therapy, Margaret says, putting the pieces together with her legal mind. All those sessions, all those doctors telling us our memories were false. They weren't trying to convince us the abuse didn't happen. They were trying to help us forget the murder we witnessed. Because we did witness it. As the memories return, I can see it all clearly now. We weren't hiding in the closet from Uncle Richard. We were hiding after grandmother shot him. We saw her standing over his body in the hallway, her face grim and determined, the smoking gun in her aged hands. We saw her make the phone call to report the accident. We watched her clean up the scene and position the body in the living room. She did it to save us, I say, though the words feel inadequate. And then everyone, Mom, Dad, the doctors, they all agreed to help us forget. Not the abuse, but the solution. The false memories of family dysfunction weren't symptoms of shared psychosis. They were carefully constructed replacements for the truth we couldn't handle. Better to believe our parents were broken than to remember that our grandmother became a killer to protect us. Better to carry imagined trauma than real guilt for being the reason someone died. That's why Mom and Dad looked so stressed in our real memories, David realizes. They were dealing with the aftermath of a murder, helping us through therapy, trying to rebuild our lives around this massive secret. And we repaid them by believing they were the ones who hurt us. The cruelest irony is that our parents never defended themselves against our false accusations. They let us blame them, let us pull away from them, let us carry our resentment into adulthood rather than risk us remembering the truth. They sacrificed their relationship with us to preserve our innocence. But now, sitting in the house where it all happened, I understand why we had to come back. Grandmother's death wasn't just an ending. It was permission to remember. She left us these clues because she knew that somewhere in our minds, we still carried the guilt of that night. We needed to understand that what happened wasn't our fault, and that the people who loved us were willing to become monsters in our memories to protect us from the real monster who would have destroyed us. The house remembers everything: the laughter in those happy photographs, the terror in that closet, the gunshot that ended our childhood, and the silence that followed. But mostly, it remembers love. The desperate, sacrificial kind of love that chooses murder over molestation, false memories over true trauma, and estrangement over honesty. As night falls around us, I realize we're not here to clean out a house. We're here to reclaim our family, to honor the people who loved us enough to let us hate them, and to finally forgive ourselves for the crime we never committed but somehow always remembered. The truth about Uncle Richard and Grandmother's sacrifice doesn't bring the relief I expected. Instead, it creates a new kind of anguish that feels heavier than our fabricated memories ever did. As we spend our second night in the house, sorting through the evidence of our reconstructed childhood, I'm overwhelmed by the magnitude of what our family endured to protect us from a truth they believed we couldn't handle. Margaret has barely spoken since we pieced together the real story. She sits at Grandmother's kitchen table, surrounded by the medical files that document our years of therapeutic memory replacement, and I can see her struggling to reconcile the guilt she's carried for decades with this new understanding. I testified against Dad during my custody hearing for Amy, she finally says, her voice breaking. I told the judge he was unstable, potentially dangerous. I used our false memories to almost cost him his relationship with his granddaughter. David has been walking through the house like a ghost, touching walls and doorframes as if he's trying to feel the memories hidden beneath the surface. He's always been the most sensitive among us, and I worry about how this revelation is affecting his already fragile mental state. All those years of therapy, he murmurs, more to himself than to us. All those sessions where I talked about feeling unsafe at home. The therapists knew I was describing fantasies, but they helped me process them as if they were real. They were protecting me from the truth, but they were also teaching me to trust false narratives over my own instincts. I find myself thinking about our parents constantly. Mom died 8 years ago, and Dad followed her just 2 years later. They went to their graves carrying the burden of our misplaced resentment, never once defending themselves against our accusations of emotional abuse and neglect. How many times did they want to tell us the truth? How many times did they bite their tongues when we blamed them for our problems, knowing that the real story would destroy what little peace we'd managed to build? Look at this, Margaret says, holding up another document from the box. It's a letter from Dad to his therapist. Apparently, he sought counseling too, trying to deal with the aftermath of that night. The letter is heartbreaking in its honesty. The children look at me like I'm the enemy now. The doctors say this is normal, that they need someone to blame, and better it should be me than the truth. But watching my own children flinch when I try to hug them, I don't know how much more of this I can take. The letter goes on to describe his struggle with depression, his consideration of suicide, and his ultimate decision to endure our rejection because the alternative, us remembering Uncle Richard's abuse and Grandmother's solution, was unthinkable. He chose to be the villain in our story so we could be the survivors instead of the witnesses to murder. They loved us so much they were willing to be hated, David says, and I hear 35 years of misplaced anger crumbling in his voice. They let us build our entire adult identities around being survivors of their abuse, and they never said a word in their own defense. But the cruelest discovery comes when we find Mom's diary, hidden behind a loose board in what used to be our parents' bedroom. The entries span the 2 years following Uncle Richard's death, and they chronicle not just her grief over the situation, but her anguish over our transformation from loving children into suspicious strangers. "Tommy won't let me tuck him in anymore," reads one entry. "He says he doesn't trust me." His therapist says this is progress, that he's learning to set boundaries, but all I see is my little boy becoming someone who's afraid of his own mother's love. Another entry, written on Margaret's 13th birthday. She didn't want a party this year. Said celebrations felt fake. I tried to explain that we can still find joy even after terrible things happen, but she just looked at me with those empty eyes and said, "What's the point? I'm losing all of them, and I don't know how to get them back without telling them the truth that would destroy them." The final entry, written just before we all left for college, is the hardest to read. They're leaving tomorrow, and I don't think they'll ever really come home again. Maybe that's for the best. Maybe the greatest gift I can give them is the freedom to build lives that aren't shadowed by what happened in this house. But God, I miss my children. I miss the way they used to laugh, the way they trusted me completely, the way they believed in happy endings. Uncle Richard didn't just try to steal their innocence, he succeeded in stealing their joy. And we helped him by choosing to bury the truth instead of finding a way to heal from it. Reading Mom's words, I realized that our parents were victims too. They lost their children just as surely as if we had died that night. They spent the rest of their lives mourning the family they had before Uncle Richard's visit, watching us grow up as strangers who looked like their children but couldn't remember how to love them. The house holds all these memories now. The happy ones from before, the horror of that night, and the long, painful years that followed. It's been a repository for our family's suffering, preserving not just the truth we forgot but the love we rejected. Every room contains evidence of parents who sacrificed everything to protect children who repaid them with suspicion and distance. As dawn breaks on our third day in the house, I understand that we're not here to clean up the past. We're here to grieve it properly for the first time. To mourn not just the parents we lost to death, but the relationship we lost to false memories. To honor the grandmother who committed murder to save us, and to finally forgive ourselves for the burden our innocence placed on everyone who loved us. The walls of this house don't just remember our past, they've been waiting for us to come home and remember it correctly, so we can finally stop running from a truth that was never about our guilt, but about their love. On our final morning in the house, something extraordinary happens. As I'm packing away the last of grandmother's photo albums, I find a sealed envelope addressed to all three of us in her distinctive handwriting. The postmark is from just 2 weeks before her death, her final gift to us, timed perfectly for this moment of revelation. Inside is a letter that completes the story we've been piecing together, but more importantly, it offers us something we didn't know we needed: permission to forgive ourselves, and an invitation to reclaim the family we thought we'd lost forever. My dear grandchildren, the letter begins. If you're reading this, then you've found the truth I've been guarding for 35 years. I hope you understand now why we made the choices we did, and why your parents loved you enough to let you blame them for sins they never committed. Margaret reads aloud as David and I listen, all of us crying freely for the first time since we were children. Grandmother's words paint a picture of family meetings we never knew about, of consultations with psychiatrists and therapists who worked together to construct a new reality that would allow us to heal without carrying the burden of witnessing murder. The doctors told us that children who witness violence in defense of themselves often carry lifelong guilt, the letter continues. They blame themselves for causing the situation, for needing to be saved, for being the reason someone had to die. We decided that false memories of emotional neglect were preferable to true memories of watching me kill your uncle. We chose to sacrifice our relationship with you, rather than saddle you with the knowledge that you were the reason violence entered our family. But the most powerful part of the letter comes next. What we didn't anticipate was how completely you would forget not just that night, but all the love that came before it. The doctors warned us that memory replacement therapy might have broader effects, but we never imagined you would lose every trace of how cherished you were. The photographs I've left for you are proof of the joy you brought to our lives, the laughter that filled these rooms, the deep contentment your parents found in raising you. She goes on to explain that our parents never stopped loving us, even as we pulled away. They attended every graduation, every wedding, every important moment in our adult lives, content to love us from a distance rather than force a closeness we couldn't accept. They celebrated our successes privately, supported us financially when we needed help, and never once considered revealing the truth that might have brought us back to them. Your mother died believing she had failed you, grandmother writes. Your father spent his final years wondering if he should have handled everything differently. They both went to their graves hoping that someday you would remember not the family you thought you had, but the family you actually were. This house has been waiting for you to come home and reclaim that love. The letter ends with specific instructions for us. We are to find a time capsule buried beneath the old oak tree in the backyard, a collection of items our parents left for us, things they hoped would help us remember who we were before that terrible night changed everything. Digging in the soft earth under the tree feels like archaeology of the heart. The metal box contains treasures that immediately transport us back to childhood. David's first painting, carefully preserved behind glass. Margaret's report card from 2nd grade with a note from Mom saying how proud she was. My collection of baseball cards with Dad's handwritten stats on each one. But the most precious item is a cassette tape labeled Bedtime Stories, July 1987. It's Dad's voice, recorded just a month before Uncle Richard's visit, reading us our favorite stories. His voice is warm, loving, patient as he voices different characters and makes sound effects that always made us giggle. This is the father I'd forgotten. Not the distant, troubled man from my false memories, but the daddy who spent hours creating magical worlds for his children. As we listen to the tape together, something shifts in the house itself. The oppressive weight I've felt in these rooms begins to lift, replaced by something lighter, warmer. It's as if the house has been holding its breath for 35 years, waiting for us to remember how to breathe joy into these spaces again. We need to keep the house, Margaret says suddenly. It's the first decisive statement she's made since we arrived. Our children should know this place, should understand where they came from. Not the story we've been telling ourselves, but the real story. The story of a family that loved so fiercely they were willing to become villains in their children's memories to protect them from something worse. David nods, already envisioning how he might turn one of the bedrooms into an art studio. I want to paint them, he says. Mom and Dad, grandmother, all of them. I want to capture them the way they really were, not the way our damaged minds made us see them. For the first time in decades, I can imagine bringing my own children here for holidays. I can see us filling these rooms with new memories while honoring the love that built the foundation we'll build upon. The house that once felt like a prison now feels like a sanctuary, not because the past has been erased, but because it's finally been remembered correctly. The walls of 1247 Maple Street have kept their secrets faithfully, waiting patiently for the day we were strong enough to hear them. They remember birthday parties and bedtime stories, family dinners and quiet evenings, and yes, they remember the night our childhood ended. But mostly, they remember love, the complicated, sacrificial, sometimes misguided but always fierce love that defines family at its truest. As we lock the door behind us for the last time as strangers, I understand that we'll return soon as the grandchildren who were cherished, the children who were protected, the family who was never broken, only temporarily forgotten. The house will be ready for us, holding space for healing, for celebration, for the continuation of a love story that never really ended. Some truths are too heavy for children to carry, but we're not children anymore. We're strong enough now to hold the full weight of our family's love, complicated and costly as it was. The house that remembers has given us back our past, and with it, the possibility of a future built on the foundation of who we really are. Not survivors of abuse, but beneficiaries of the most profound love imaginable. In the end, that's what houses remember best. Not the moments of crisis, but the steady rhythm of daily love that makes a house a home. And finally, after 35 years of exile, we're ready to come home. To support the channel, please leave a like and subscribe. Thank you so much.